So there's some other strategies that might help. I'm going to go back to heat. I actually prepared a 1-hour lecture on the historical use of heat and the use of sweat lodges and saunas. It's been traditional for a long, long time. Sauna bathing exposes people to high temperature for varying periods of time. It increases the body's core temperature, which has a positive effect on many, many functions in the body. The body, and people sometimes say they hate heat. That's one of the biggest objections to coming to my hot yoga studio, but you acclimate to it. Humans acclimate to anything. I mean, the first, and this is just a funny thing I'll share with you. People will say sometimes, am I going to like your hot yoga? I tell them, well, not in the beginning. Nobody likes it in the beginning. It's hot, it's hard, it's 90 minutes. You're not used to the heat. You're not used to doing a lot of party tricks like balancing on one leg for a minute. So no, you're not going to like it in the beginning, but you'll acclimate. Saunas have been used safely for thousands of years all over the world, and the reported benefits are everything from spiritual growth to pain relief. And so there are several types of saunas, and which one you choose to use depends on you, but the type of heat, the level of humidity vary. There are several mechanisms by which saunas can improve health. And you'll see here impact on the central nervous system, autonomic nervous system, increased heart rate, blood flow, cardiac output, sweating, and increased nitric oxide production. In other words, there are specific benefits of sauna that are very much related to the specific pathologies of long COVID. However they started, whether it was COVID or it started before COVID, it doesn't really make any difference. You still have to solve the problem in order for people to enjoy health. The body needs to be stressed. That's part of the problem. All this sitting that people do, they never work up a sweat. They don't stress their body in any way. That is not good. So cardiac output improves. Heat tolerance develops as plasma volume increases to provide a reserve source of fluid for sweating. And sweating facilitates detoxification and can even induce excretion of metals such as aluminum, cadmium, cobalt, and lead. So humans are designed to sweat. And by the way, your skin will look better if you sweat. You'll feel better if you sweat. And sweating is, and people who don't sweat will actually start sweating if they work hard enough at it. Sometimes that's a problem. People haven't really worked up a sweat for a long, long time. Hormesis is a compensatory response following exposure to a stressor that's disproportionate to the magnitude of the stressor. It triggers protective mechanisms that repair cell damage, provides protection against more severe stressors. And other forms of hormetic stressors include exercise. So exercise stresses the body, makes you stronger, all right? There is no such thing as having a strong body and being healthy without stressing the body, which people are remarkably reluctant to do. We are comfort-seeking creatures to a certain extent, and we should be challenge-seeking creatures, both mentally to keep our brains in good shape and physically to keep our bodies and our brains in good shape. So a lot of these kinds of things, just again, some of the stuff goes way back before COVID. People should have been doing some of these things before. And the fact that they're having trouble getting well from COVID becomes the motivator to do it. Heat shock proteins are present in all cells and in extracellular spaces. They're involved in all kinds of things, including immune function. So they can prevent the protein aggregation and assist with cellular repair. So heat stress significantly increases intracellular levels of HSPs in humans. So that's a way to restore and improve immune function, all right? Inflammation is an important part of the natural immune response. We talked about that at length yesterday. Chronic low-grade inflammation, not so much, all right? Both exercise and sauna will increase the right type of inflammatory markers, right? So you want some inflammation and you want it for acute periods of time, but you don't want this low-level chronic inflammation with all the wrong markers that make you sick. Endothelial dysfunction, common in congestive heart failure, also common in long COVID. 2 weeks of sauna therapy was shown to improve endothelial function and cardiac function. Left ventricular dysfunction results in compensatory mechanisms, which is common after myocardial infarction, increases the risk of stroke. Single session and long-term use of sauna is shown to improve left ventricular function in men with congestive heart failure. So to the extent that cardiac comorbidities are common with COVID and long COVID, the sauna, the heat starts to make some sense. And then pain relief. To the extent that residual pain seems to accompany long COVID, patients with fibromyalgia, either with or without other conditions like lupus or rheumatoid arthritis, report improvements in pain and fewer tender points after 12 weeks of both combined sauna and underwater exercise therapy. And sauna bathing for 4 weeks was shown to improve pain and stiffness in patients with RA and ankylosing spondylosis, but the effect wasn't sustained after therapy ceased. Well, nothing is sustained after the therapy stops. In other words, if you're eating well and you stop eating well, you're not going to remain healthy. If you exercise and then you stop exercising. So if you're using the strategies that we're talking about here for therapy, you keep engaging in them if you want to remain healthy. And people say, well, it takes time. I'll tell you what takes a whole lot of time is being sick. And people will spend full time on it because they don't want to die, right? Or they're terrified. So don't wait till the terrified place to be doing some of the stuff that I'm talking about. Yoga can be very helpful. A review of 32 randomized controlled trials with over 2,700 participants. The control groups were people who got conventional treatment and education, aerobic exercise, cognitive therapy. Comparison of yogis with sedentary people. Those who practice yoga lowered their cholesterol, blood pressure, diastolic blood pressure, body mass index, triglycerides, all things related to general health, but post-COVID syndrome, right? Yoga compared with aerobic exercise, it was comparable in improving body mass index, weight, blood pressure, cholesterol, and triglycerides. It's an attractive alternative for people who can't do some forms of exercise. It's an attractive alternative no matter what else you can do. Full disclosure, I own a yoga studio. Having said that, I really, even before I owned this yoga studio, recognized the negative effects of not taking a yoga class if I were to go for, say, a week without yoga. The most miserable time I ever had, I'll just share this with you, was when I had my gums rebuilt. And I was the first person in the history of the clinic where they do this that had all 4 quadrants of the mouth done at the same time. I had 400 stitches in my mouth. And they told me that I couldn't go into the hot yoga room because if it all swelled up, they'd have to do it again. And it was really expensive and I couldn't afford to do it again. So long story short, I was not able to be in the hot yoga room for 3 weeks. And the physical deterioration during that 3 weeks, stiffness and just like feeling, kind of those aches and pains coming back, which I wasn't used to. You never saw anybody take so much yoga after that 3-week period was up. I was happy to do it to get this other problem solved, but boy, was it good to get back in that hot yoga room. Yoga and mental health. I mean, a lot of what I described to you earlier had to do with emotional and cognitive issues. A review of 35 trials that looked at the effect of yoga on stress and anxiety. 25 showed a significant decrease in stress and or anxiety. A meta-analysis of studies that looked at the effect of yoga on mental health. Yoga had a positive and measurable effect on depression, schizophrenia, even ADHD, sleep. Some studies show that yoga affects the body in the same way as antidepressants, which is a whole lot better option, I have to say. It increases serotonin levels and lowers inflammation, reduces oxidative stress. Kundalini yoga is even effective for the treatment of OCD. So to the extent that some of what we're dealing with long COVID is emotional, psychosocial, yoga can be helpful. The other thing is that now that some of the world has gone back to normal, yoga is a group activity that involves being around health-minded people. I mean, we don't have people who don't care about their health taking classes at our yoga studio. So you are a product of the company you keep, and this is some good company to keep. Acupuncture for pain. And for those who have specific pain, while you're lowering the inflammation and getting your body moving again and taking some yoga classes and, just kind of cleaning your internal house, acupuncture can be helpful. I'm not a fan of acupuncture as an isolated practice. And by the way, in traditional Chinese medicine, it's not practiced that way. Ancient healing systems like Ayurveda and TCM really promote a whole person approach to health. And so that's the way I like to see it included here. There's some evidence for acupuncture for long COVID, mostly case reports, but they can be instructive. Some of the mechanisms would be lowering inflammation, increasing production of nitric oxide, stimulated microcirculation, and regulation of the vagus nerve. So just think about if you did all this stuff, you started going to the sauna, taking yoga classes, exercising, aerobic exercising, eating a low-fat, high-fiber, plant-based diet. You start doing again, converting to a health-destroying to a health-promoting lifestyle. All kinds of problems go away. And again, I continue to emphasize this. The long COVID is just actually a constellation of symptoms that are common after infection, but usually have their origin from before the virus ever happened. Last thing I'll talk about here is hair loss is concerning, and hair loss seems to be a hallmark symptom of COVID that's different than other coronaviruses and colds and things of that nature. And so there's a lot of talk about biotin. I finally decided to write a paper about it because so many people were asking. So I'll tell you what we know about it and give you some recommendations. So it's a B family vitamin. It helps to convert nutrients into energy. It contributes to the health of eyes, liver, and nervous system. Important for fetal development. It's water soluble. The body doesn't store it. It's abundantly available in food. In other words, biotin deficiencies are just, I've never heard of it before. The gut microbiota in humans produces a little bit of B vitamin, including biotin. The only way you could have a deficiency is if you weren't eating enough calories, then you become deficient in everything. There is no RDA established, but it's easy to meet with food. A deficiency can lead to hair loss, but it's not thought that that's what's going on since almost nobody is deficient. So potential causes of deficiency for those who might have it would be bad habits, alcoholism, smoking, if you're sick enough to need parenteral nutrition, drugs for epilepsy, acne drugs. To the extent that anybody might need extra biotin, it would be because of relatively extraordinary circumstances. I would imagine if you're taking Sunday morning to spend time with me, you're probably not an alcoholic who's smoking cigarettes during this lecture, right? So not the usual person. In terms of using biotin for hair growth, the studies are mixed. One review reported that only those who have a confirmed biotin deficiency benefit from supplementation. Another group conducted a PubMed search of all case reports and RCTs on human subjects, and they found no RCTs, but identified 18 case reports or case series of biotin use for hair and nail repair or growth. All subjects had identifiable causes for their issues, and all showed some evidence of improvement after taking biotin. The researchers concluded that biotin is effective for people who have known deficiencies, and it's not effective for healthy people, but then a healthy person wouldn't be experiencing hair loss, right? An industry-funded study, a supplement containing biotin and some other nutrients, was effective for hair regrowth in women generally in good health who had self-perceived thinning hair. For women taking biotin, the number of terminal hairs increased from 271 to 571 after 3 months of treatment, and at 6 months increased to 609 hairs, extra hairs coming up. No change in the placebo group. And the women who took the supplement also said that there was improvement in their overall hair volume and thickness. So this is a subjective report, and we have to take it with some caution, but still, it's there. The study was randomized, double-blinded, placebo-controlled, but the study design was not so great. The supplement contained other vitamins and minerals, so you can't really attribute the success to the biotin alone. Women were excluded from the study who had conditions that might lead to hair loss, for example, autoimmune diseases. And the results most likely are irrelevant for most women, considering biotin is a solution for thinning hair. And it was, again, industry funded. There's some evidence of efficacy for children with a rare condition called uncombable hair syndrome. I just saw a news story on this. It's dry, blonde, tangled hair. And two young patients with uncombable hair were given 5 milligrams of biotin daily. Both showed improvement in the appearance of their hair, maintained after supplementation was stopped. Another study that included 3 kids with uncombable hair, oral biotin for 4 months resulted in increased growth strength and compatibility in 1 out of the 3. So there's no evidence that it's toxic. There's no upper limit that's been established, which is not necessarily meaning that you can take as much as you want and there's no problem. It means it's never been looked at. The only side effect that I could find that was worth mentioning and something that you should be aware of is that if you're taking high intakes of biotin, so for example, 5,000 milligrams a day is often recommended for hair growth, it may alter your lab tests for thyroid hormone. So you either stop taking the biotin a couple weeks before your blood test, if you're seeing your physician for an annual visit or something of that nature, or you tell your doctor not to pay any attention. I mean, this would not work if you were a hypothyroid patient needing a refill for a prescription. But the other thing is you can just tell your doctor, ignore my thyroid panel because that's going to be skewed because I've been taking biotin for hair growth for a long time. So again, I don't know that we can guarantee that the use of biotin will grow hair, but I don't really know that there's anything harmful about it except the warning about blood tests. So certainly worth trying, and a lot of my clients have done that. The average dose appears to be 2.5 to 5,000 micrograms a day. Most published studies are short term, so you probably would have to take it longer to see a change. So we don't have any idea, what the duration of treatment should be, just a lot of unknowns. But again, to the extent that particularly women find hair loss alarming and for good, I mean, we all want to look good. I totally understand that. It might be something that you want to consider. So my conclusions, and then we can go to questions, are that symptoms, sometimes very long-term, often follow infections with a variety of pathogens. So the fact that we have symptoms after COVID, not shocking, somewhat to be expected, but just maybe hyped a little bit more, and maybe with a couple of little different twists because of the very nature of that spike protein. But we need to come off the ledge and just look at this from a logical standpoint. Pre-infection health and psychological state are very important factors for the development of post-infection sequelae. And addressing pre-infection physical and psychological health issues is an important first step. And there's such a wide variety of symptoms and this sort of thing that everybody has to be treated as an individual person. And again, with a history, going back and looking at what have you been eating, what have you been drinking, what's your health status, what drugs were you taking, and taking the same whole person approach that we would take whatever somebody came into the office with, right? I've always said I don't just want to be part of the reductionist model of medicine where people see a gastroenterologist and a nephrologist and a rheumatologist and an endocrinologist and a gynecologist. I mean, everybody's specializing in a body part. Come over here, we'll teach you how to eat, and we're just part of the reductionist thing. You have to look at the totality of your health and your habits and everything else, and use a whole person approach. So to a certain extent, long COVID is just like every day at the office for us. And many times it isn't really long COVID. It's just poor health exacerbated by having a pretty serious case of the flu. So I hope that was helpful in outlining this for you, and we can take the rest of the time to have questions.